Welcome back to the NerdNest, everybody. I'm Bill, and today we're going to be taking a look at the ASUS ROG GR70 mini PC. I've had it for about a month at this point, and I've been putting it through its paces, and I thought that I would sit down and talk to you about what I think about this very powerful, very small, but also extremely expensive piece of hardware. So the first thing that I need to point out is that this case is absolutely tiny. It's a 3-liter case, and the amount of power that you have inside this case is really expensive. Of course, you are paying for that power in that small form factor with the price of this thing, but you're not going to be able to build something this small and this compact. And what's even more impressive to me is that it's also still upgradable. Now, when I say upgradable, I don't mean that you can swap out the GPU or the CPU, but you can increase the amount of RAM. You can add extra hard drives to it because they arranged all of the interior parts in such a way that it still gives you access to those parts that you could upgrade. Hey everybody, Bill from the future here. I was in the middle of working on this video and I got a message from my rep at ASUS. It was about the price of the GR70. When they first reached out to me about the GR70 and they asked me if I wanted to take a look at it and give them my feedback, the price that they said it would probably be sitting at, it wasn't ready yet. Like, they weren't sure what the price was going to be. It was always going to be in flux, but the price was originally going to be $25.99 or $2,600 roughly. Well, because of the RAM shortage, the price has gone up, and it has gone up substantially. The price is now $39.99. Now, this again is still not a final price. They're still floating around trying to figure out what they can do about the price of this, but RAM prices have soared everywhere. The price of this has gone up a very large percentage. And, you know, everything that I said about price before, about how there's no way I could afford this as a teacher anyway, that all stands. But it also stands what I said before, is that I can't make my videos based on what my anticipation of what your wallets are like. Only you can look at a device and make a decision about whether or not something would work for you, and whether or not something is more or is too expensive or just the right price for you. So when I talk about these devices, I mean, I'm going to tell you the prices if I know them, but I'm not going to say whether or not I think this is too expensive or not too expensive, because I think that that's up to you, the individual. I'm just telling you what these devices can do, and then you can make the decision about whether or not you think that the price is too high or the price is too low. Now, for full transparency, ASUS is not sponsoring this video, but they did send me this hardware for free. And so it's not a review, it's more of an overview of what you can expect if you end up picking one of these up. When it comes to mini PCs, they sit in this weird twilight zone between laptops and desktops. I mean, there's huge advantages to having a laptop. You can take it with you. But if you want something that's just hooked up to your TV all the time, then a laptop probably isn't the right move. Having it plugged in all the time is not good for the battery. And my friend Bob had something plugged into his arcade for, I think, 6 months or something, and the battery in it started swelling. So he ended up having to get rid of it. Because of that, you don't want to have a laptop that's plugged into the TV all the time. So what's the alternative? Well, the alternative is a desktop. And desktops take up tons of room. So in between those two are these mini PC form factors that are a lot more expensive than a similarly spec'd desktop, but they're much smaller and easier to just set on the shelf and forget about. In fact, here you can see the GR70 sitting next to a PS5 and a PS5 Pro. You can see just how absolutely tiny this thing is. But if you're not hooking this up in the living room, if you're just using it at a desk like I have been for the past month, then I don't know that the size of it is really that important. Sure, it takes up a whole lot less space on my desk than a regular PC would, but I could also just put it on the floor underneath my desk and not really have to worry about that. So if you are looking for something to put on your desk and use that way, I don't know if this is really the device for you. On the other side of the coin though, if you're using this in a living room setup, like I think a lot of people would, this is a Windows machine, which means you have all of the hoops that you have to jump through when you're dealing with a Windows machine. Again, this device is great because of its form factor, but the reason that I would want this form factor is to use it in a living room, and using Windows in a living room is a pain in the ass. Of course, there's going to be people that say, well, Bill, you could just install Linux on it. And you're right, I absolutely could. But I just wanted to talk about this as it was out of the box. In the future, I might end up throwing like CatchyOS or something like that on here just so that I can test it out. And if that's a video that you guys would like to see later on, leave a comment down below and we'll see if I can get to it. Let's take a look at the I/O on the front. We have a 3.5mm headphone jack, a Type-C USB 3.2 port, as well as two Type-A USB 3.2 ports. The old one that they had sent me, I think a couple of years ago, also had an SD card reader on the front, which was really cool. This one does not, so I think that is definitely thumbs down on that. I would have liked to see an SD card reader on the front. If for no other reason, I do a lot of content creation stuff and I'm constantly grabbing SD cards, throwing them into a piece of hardware and trying to transfer footage so that I can edit video. You know what I mean? If you don't do that, maybe an SD card reader is not important to you. And I'm guessing maybe ASUS looked at it and they said, well, nobody's using the SD card reader, or nobody seems to care about the SD card reader, so we can yank it out and it doesn't matter if Bill's happy about it or not. The I/O on the back, we have four USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type A ports, 2.5 gigabit LAN, a single USB 4 Type-C port that supports DisplayPort 1.4. They also have two HDMI 2.1 ports and two display ports that actually support DisplayPort 2.1. And of course, there's a barrel jack on the bottom for power. I think overall the I/O for this device is great, except there's too many USB-A ports and not enough USB-C ports. The more new devices that I get here into the NerdNest that I end up, starting to collect, more and more of them are coming with only USB-C. So then I have to have like one of these little dongles that converts USB-C to USB-A just so that I can plug it into the back of a device like this. I think it's time to start phasing out USB-A. I have way less devices that need USB-A. USB-C is the way to go. Upgrades on this are super easy. The most that you would need is a screwdriver. In order to open it up, you don't even need any tools, but then once you get inside, you might need to loosen a screw in order to put like an M.2 drive in or something like that. The GR70 comes with an AMD Ryzen 9 9955HX3D, which is a Zen 5 architecture chip with 16 cores and 32 threads. The one that they sent me was with 64 gigs of DDR5 RAM with support to up to 128 gigs of RAM. The GPU in here is the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 5070 laptop GPU. Unfortunately, it only has 8 gigs of VRAM, although so does the Steam machine, and so does a lot of other stuff these days because of the RAM, the Rampacalypse. That's just the way it goes. But with a device like this, the last one, even when RAM was cheap, the last one only had 8 gigs of VRAM. There are going to be games where you will run into problems with that, and you'll have to manage your VRAM by, turning some settings on and off in games in order to, hit just that 8 gigs without pushing it too far. For example, if you're playing a game like Indiana Jones, you could run out of VRAM if you don't turn off certain settings. So that's something you definitely want to keep an eye on, because 8 gigs of VRAM is a big limitation here. It has Wi-Fi 7 as well as support for dual M.2 DDS drives. It's pretty quiet for the most part. I mean, when you are really pushing it, you are going to hear it. It's a machine, and machines have moving parts, and moving parts make noise. So of course it's going to make noise. But overall, it's a fairly quiet machine, and it's quieter than my big desktop machine that I have hooked up to my living room PC right now. It comes with Armoury Crate pre-installed. Now, Armoury Crate is pretty useful because it allows you to switch between different modes, and you can base those modes based on what games you're playing. So if you are playing a game that requires a lot more beef to it, you can say, okay, I need to be in turbo mode. By default, it comes in performance mode, so you definitely want to go into Armoury Crate and change that to turbo mode if you're playing a game that needs more power behind it. But if you're playing something that it doesn't need quite as much power, you could set it down to silent mode. Honestly, I just leave it on turbo. And if I'm playing a game that doesn't require a lot of power, it's not making a whole bunch of noise. So I think it's just handling it on its own just fine without having to manually manage how much TDP you're throwing at it. And speaking of the different modes, I ran all of my benchmarking in the turbo mode. So let's take a look at those results. I still like to give Time Spy scores because Time Spy has been around for longer, but Steel Nomad is the replacement for Time Spy. So I'm going to give you all of those numbers here as well. For Time Spy, I got a score of 14,111. Time Spy Extreme, which is supposed to be like for 4K stuff, is 7175. And then Steel Nomad, which is like the newer version of Time Spy, from what I understand, that got a score of 3188. I also ran some benchmarks on some games that have like built-in benchmarks, which is my preferred way to benchmark stuff, because that means I can do things the exact same way every single time, and I don't have to worry about me being bad at doing something in the game. I always want to have those same results, and so these are the results that I'm going to show you right now. Starting with Cyberpunk 2077, I had the resolution set to 4K, the graphics set to ray tracing low with frame generation off, and my average FPS was 51. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, resolution was set to 4K, the graphics were set to the highest, and my average FPS on that game was 83. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I had my resolution set to 4K and the graphics preset was set to ultra high. My average FPS was 47. This one also gives you your 1% lows and your 0.1% lows. The 1% low was 29 and the lowest 0.1% was 20. But what do you guys think of the ASUS ROG GR70? Let me know in the comments down below. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe. From the Nerd Nest, I'm Bill. Stay rad, and thanks for watching.